Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. It's good to be with you here on this afternoon here on the East Coast, still morning out west on Thursday, the 29th. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Hope everyone is having a good week so far. And for those who've traveled to City Beautiful here in Orlando for the various events during Commercial Space Week, I hope you're all having a good conference for whichever part of it you're attending, whether it was for the spaceport portion earlier in the week, space mobility yesterday, or the Space Congress, which is currently underway out in Orlando. It's good to see some familiar faces yesterday at Space Mobility. Speaking of familiar faces, this broadcast is being supported on the technical side by John Pisani, as well as our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. Our other photographers are off on this one, given that this is a West Coast venture. But if you're not already, you should take a beat and make sure you're following them at their handles on X. John is at John Pisani Photo, Adam is at Aburn NYC, and Michael is at MD Kane Jr. While you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. If you're not on X, you can also find us on Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky. I want to thank the more than 900 of you who are watching along with us live at this point in the count. SpaceX is currently fueling its Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 4 East out at Vandenberg. We'll talk about the countdown here in just a moment, but first want to thank our moderators for being with us this morning. Thanks to Jeff Hansen and Astro Joe for holding it down in the chat, as well as Mark Otto. You can help make the mods' jobs that much easier just by following our live chat rules. We ask that you post your message in English so that the mods can respond as appropriate and needed. Also, we ask that you hold off from delving into topics of overt politics or religion, and please don't post your message in all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't create a huge block of them so it takes up a large chunk of the live chat. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated, and we'll all get along swimmingly. As for where we are in the count right now, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, it's currently just about 25 and a half minutes away from the liftoff as scheduled of this Falcon 9 rocket out in California. We're in the midst of the fueling timelines. Let's go ahead and step through what is still ahead for SpaceX. The go-ahead for the start of tanking was granted at around T-minus 38 minutes, with fueling starting at T-minus 35. At that point, SpaceX started to load RP-1, which is a cryogenic, rocket-grade kerosene on board the rocket's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen began to flow on board the rocket's first stage. Around T-minus 30 minutes is when SpaceX started to load that cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage, and did the same for the second just a couple minutes ago. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes coming up next is when second stage RP-1 loading should wrap up. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the strong back chill down process should get underway. At this point in the count, had we eyes on the Falcon 9, we would be seeing the start of the so-called big vent, beginning around T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, lasting about 4 minutes in duration. This is when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage, which will begin at T-minus 16 minutes. Moving right along, T minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines begins. SpaceX at this point in the count will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that will help to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strongback, otherwise referred to as the transporter erector. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then that large truss structure will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. And here at Vandenberg, at this particular pad, it will stay in that position up to and through liftoff. About 3 minutes before departure from Slick 4 East, the first stage liquid oxygen tank will be full. Same will be true on the rocket's second stage LOX tank about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with about 1,000,000 pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds before takeoff, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is entered into its automated startup sequence, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and at the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will then confirm that they are in fact go for launch at T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be given at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting the time that you see here on your screen, 9:53 a.m. Pacific, 12:53 p.m. Eastern, 17:53 UTC for our friends around the world, just about 22 minutes from now. As is the case with all of our live launch opportunities, this broadcast is made possible in no small part thanks to the ongoing support from our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So big thanks to folks like Richard W., Glenn Ashworth, Aaron Quake, of course, our moderators today, Mrs. Ed3, and many, many others. M. Teresa, hello, welcome to you. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Want to welcome in new channel member Jose Rene Lin, who joined with membership at the pad leader level and then quickly upgraded to the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that support this morning. Thanks for joining us. Also want to welcome aboard Jay Bowman, joining us in membership at the pad leader level as well. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can follow the lead of folks like TWSSR by using the YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query highlighted for discussion, assuming, of course, that it is appropriate to be read aloud during the broadcast. So thanks to TW for the $10 Super Chat. Really appreciate the support today. TW says, go Spaceflight now. Go SpaceX. Go Falcon 9. Go Starlink. Go Elon. And the Kaiser 2023 with a $5 Super Chat says, as always, hello mods, and their words, not mine. Amazing Will Robinson Smith. Have a great weekend and go SpaceX. Thank you for the kind words. And I will extend the amazing adjective to my colleagues who are not on the mic as well, but very much responsible for making Spaceflight Now happen. Taking a look at the weather today, weather always important for any launch to be aware of. Conditions are quite good out at Vandenberg, so should be lovely viewing for folks who are able to take a beat to step outside and see this rocket fly on a southeasterly trajectory, cruising along or excuse me, more of a southwest trajectory for today. The Starlink 17-19 mission will be sending these 25 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites into a polar low Earth orbit. The trajectory for tonight's Starlink mission set to fly from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That's going to fly on a southeasterly trajectory. Weather also looking quite good out here in Florida, albeit quite cold by Florida standards, certainly. You can see some of the snow along the mountain range there next to the cursor on the map. So hopefully for folks that are so inclined in California, you've gotten a chance to head up to the Sierra Nevada region and get a little skiing or snowboarding in while the snow is fresh and more pleasant to trek down. As always, we're also in the realm of keeping tabs on fueling. We're watching as things progress towards the all-important tanking test here in Florida for NASA's Space Launch System rocket. Right now, bringing in a live picture of that launch vehicle out at Launch Complex 39B. As things are currently scheduled, teams are expected to be on console tonight at around 8 p.m., which is about 49 hours prior to the simulated T0. That's coming up on Saturday, February 1st. Spaceflight now will have live coverage of those final hours of this all-important tanking test, and we'll be starting our broadcast around the time that fueling is set to begin. And the run-up to that, especially if things are going to be adjusted, we will pop in with some light commentary over on our 24/7 stream, Artemis Live, and let you know if there are any adjustments to announce to the timeline of things for the wet dress rehearsal at that point. So it'll be a busy day for us here covering the important WDR, which is one of the big poles in the tent that will determine when NASA is able to set a more firm launch date for the Artemis 2 mission. The first opportunity, as scheduled right now, is February 6th, but again, for everyone's planning purposes, that is not a firm launch date. That is just the first day that exists within their launch window in February. Bringing things back to the Starlink mission out west, we're currently T-minus 15 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. At this point, the big vent will have wrapped up and SpaceX should be loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. The Falcon 9 first stage booster that is supporting today's flight carries the tail number of B1082. This will be its 19th trip to space and back. Impressive, sure, but not quite enough flights to get it a spot on the Falcon 9 frequent flyers list. Here's currently where SpaceX stands on its most flown Falcon 9 first stage boosters. B1067 continues to lead the pack at 32 missions completed so far, as the company is working towards certifying its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. Obviously, reuse is more than just a number, and the types of missions that SpaceX flies with its boosters are determined based off of its previous flight history and the amount of stress that any particular booster has undergone so far. So there's more analysis that goes into determining how many flights a booster should have and when they're able to get back in the fold and for which mission than just how many flights they've previously conducted. Just about 12 and a half minutes remaining on the clock at this point. Today's flight of a batch of 25 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites represents SpaceX's eighth deployment upcoming of its Starlink constellation so far in 2026. Taking a look at some B-roll shared by SpaceX of its Starlink manufacturing process up in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. The 25 Starlink satellites on this mission, once deployed into low Earth orbit, will also carry the 11,000th Starlink satellite that SpaceX has deployed since it began sending its broadband internet satellites to orbit back in May of 2019. As I mentioned, this will be the eighth Starlink launch of the year so far. 5 from here in Florida. This will be the third from Vandenberg in California. These optimized versions of the V2 mini satellites are considerably lighter than their counterparts, which is why SpaceX can now launch 25 of them from Vandenberg and 29 from here in Florida in a single flight. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. There you see demo of those thrusters on your screen. Built right here in the Redmond, Washington facilities, you're seeing right now the process of that. And these particular satellites will be deployed at an altitude of about 163 miles or 262 kilometers in altitude at a 97.3-degree inclination. And as a reminder for folks who have maybe this is your first broadcast with us after seeing the GPS launch earlier this week, for the Starlink constellation, SpaceX has stopped showing deployment live some time ago. So we'll be relying on the company to confirm a successful deployment after the fact. Taking a look back at our live chat here, I want to thank the now 2,000 of you who are watching along with us live today. Certainly appreciate you being on board with us. If you haven't already, you could help even more people find this broadcast just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, speaking of appreciation, want to welcome in Brooding Jet, joining us with membership at the PAL leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. As SpaceX founder Elon Musk noted in a tweet earlier this week, I believe, the company is planning to launch the first Starship version 3 rocket from Starbase, Texas, in as soon as 6 weeks, which would put it in the early March timeframe. That first launch is expected to be another suborbital flight test of the rocket, but potentially as soon as Flight 13, we could see SpaceX make an orbital launch attempt and potentially, not guaranteed by any means, but potentially start to deploy the V3 Starlink satellites at that point or conceivably shortly thereafter. The V3s are considerably larger than the currently flying V2 mini satellites, as you can see in this animation here. Comparison of the version 1.5s and a suited astronaut compared to the V2s and the V3s. SpaceX has previously said that a stack of 60 would be able to load up on a Starship version 3 rocket with a deployment period of roughly 60 minutes or one satellite per minute, going out of what SpaceX calls the PEZ dispenser on Starship. Again, no guarantee about when exactly the V3 versions of Starlink satellites will start to fly, but presumably at some point this year, potentially in the first half of the year, if all goes very smoothly for the company. Also, some activity out here in Florida regarding Starship during the Space Mobility Conference yesterday. Colonel Brian Chapman mentioned that Starship flights are expected from Pad 39A potentially later this summer or perhaps in the fall timeframe. VP of Launch Kiko Donchev previously said last year that they will only bring Starship to Florida for launches once they feel confident and comfortable with the vehicle. So once we see at least a couple good flights, I would imagine, from Starbase, then we'll start to see a campaign towards a launch of Starship from here in the Sunshine State. As you can see on the clock in the right-hand corner of your screen, we're just about at the 6-minute mark. About a minute or so ago, SpaceX started to flow some liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to protect the engines. And right about now, the first stage RP1 tank fueling the booster should have reached flight levels. As we're about to get views of the Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX along with mission audio, let's take a beat here to talk about the trajectory where the rocket will be flying once it does leave the pad. Again, this is the Starlink 17-19 mission with the rocket set to fly on a largely southerly trajectory, slightly south-southwest, with the first stage booster B-1082 aiming to target a landing on the drone ship called Of Course I Still Love You. A successful landing today would represent the 174th good touchdown on this particular vessel and the 565th booster landing for SpaceX in total. And of course, the company is wanting to recover those payload fairings as well and certify them for up to 40 flights apiece. Same with the boosters. And we are now getting mission audio and pad views from SpaceX. Also want to note that once again, for the second time, well, first want to note that the strong back is retracting away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It'll pull back about 13 degrees away from the vehicle, but also worth noting that we are once again seeing what appear to be potentially Starship thermal protection system tiles flying on at least one half of the payload fairings. We did see this during the last Starlink mission from Vandenberg as well. We've reached out to SpaceX for comment or confirmation about what appear to be Starship heat shield tiles. We have not gotten, uh, we've not gotten any answer back yet. Just under 3 minutes to go. We should hear a
Stage
call
1
out.
LOX load is complete.
There we go for stage 1 LOX load, wrapping up.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Just at the bottom of your frame, you're seeing the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
This is SpaceX releasing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. And as you can see, beautiful conditions late morning here at Vandenberg. So if you're able to capture a glimpse of the Falcon 9 taking flight, we'd love to see your photos or video. Be sure to tag us on social media. You can find us simply at Spaceflight Now.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are, in fact, go for launch.
LD is go for launch.
And with that confirmation call, we'll step back on our commentary and join you once again on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power. And liftoff. Go SpaceX, go Starlink.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
And nearly a minute into
Power
the
and
flight, a
telemetry
good
nominal.
ascent to the Falcon 9 rocket. taking flight from Vandenberg Space Force Base with a good view of the coastline down
Vehicle
below.
supersonic.
Now 1 minute into flight, approaching max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
Max Q.
Engines throttling back up after max Q. Should hear a call in about 15 or so seconds regarding the chill down of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage.
MVAC chill is overway.
And with that call for MVAC chill coming up next, a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at roughly T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds into flight. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage. Payload fairings should jettison around the 3-minute mark in flight. About 10 seconds to MECO.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Good calls, good visuals here. As the hypersonic grid fins deploy, we're coming up to fairing jettison next.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a nice view of the Starlink satellites this morning, with the payload fairings now making their way back to Earth. They'll be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. Now coming up on 4 minutes into flight. The next milestone is coming up here a little bit past 6 minutes into this mission. That will be the start of the 3-engine entry burn, which will dramatically slow the booster down and prepare it for its upcoming landing burn. Looks like the booster is topping out at an apogee of 113 kilometers. Will start making its descent towards the drone ship here momentarily. Now a little more than 5 minutes into flight. Once again, the 3-engine entry burn set to begin in less than a minute now. Some gorgeous views of the Earth below from both the first and second stage onboard cameras. Still appearing to be a nominal flight as well for this Falcon 9 rocket. Those puffs you're seeing occasionally between the hypersonic grid fins on the booster, those are the cold gas thrusters, which help adjust the vehicle's attitude or positioning, putting it in the right orientation ahead of the start of that entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And with the conclusion of that entry burn, coming up next will be the start of the single engine landing burn, which will take this booster down to a landing on the drone ship.
Stage 1 transonic.
Booster now traveling below the speed of sound. Less than 30 seconds
Stage
about
2
to the start
FTS is saved.
of the landing burn. A call regarding the FTS, the flight termination system, no longer needed at this stage of the flight.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown for B-1082, landing safely for a 19th time.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
With the confirmation of that good orbit insertion, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket will coast until about T plus 53 minutes and 14 seconds. There will be a brief 1-second burn to circularize its orbit, and then the Starlink satellites will be deployed at roughly 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 6 seconds after liftoff. And with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, we're going to come to our mission stats to begin to close things out. But first, want to welcome in a couple new channel members and thank some folks for their support. Welcome to Larry Neese and Arlene Pryor, both joining us with membership at the PAD leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Also, thanks to channel members Chuck Close for $25 super chat and Glenn Ashworth for a $5 super chat. Really appreciate the support from the both of you today for our coverage. Turning now to the mission stats, they currently stand with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster today. That marked the 19th flight for booster 1082. This was SpaceX's 594th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 12th of the year so far. Looking for flight number 13 later tonight from Cape Canaveral. This was SpaceX's 528th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the company's 165th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 176th flight for SpaceX from Pad 4 East, and the 244th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's a look at the bar chart representation of where SpaceX is this year compared to years past. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 174th landing of a booster on the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You. That marked SpaceX's 463rd drone ship landing and the 565th booster landing for SpaceX. Also, the 566th overall booster landing, including Blue Origin's Never Tell Me the Odds booster. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 6th orbital launch of the year so far from California, the 12th from U.S. soil. Pause here for just a moment. We did see an update from Firefly Aerospace noting that they have their booster in pre-launch testing for Flight 7 of their Alpha rockets. So look for hopefully a launch date following a successful static fire campaign from the company for Flight 7. No date has been announced for that mission just yet, though. We'll update our launch schedule once we do have a firm date for that mission. But the company, in announcing some of their merch related to that, did release the mission patch for Flight 7, confirming that they will fly a payload for Lockheed Martin as part of its 25 mission contract with the company, a flight nicknamed Stairway to 7. So again, we'll have more information on the return to flight for Alpha when it comes available. Bringing things back to our mission stats here. Today's flight was also the 13th for a U.S. rocket company, including the one mission so far from Rocket Lab down in New Zealand. Also, there may be an Electron launch later on today. Rocket Lab has not made a lot of comment on that so far, but there are indications that it would fly around 7:55 p.m. Eastern, again lifting off from Launch Complex 1 down in Mahia, New Zealand. Finally, this was the 21st orbital launch around the world. There have been 3 orbital failures so far this year. Here's where the pie chart currently stands. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up with our coverage of the Starlink 17-19 mission. As a reminder, we'll have dedicated coverage on the flight of the Starlink 6-101 mission, delivering 29 Starlink satellites to orbit. That's coming up right now as currently scheduled, 11:01 p.m. Eastern, 4:01 UTC departure time from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And if you'd like to keep tabs on what's going on with Artemis, you can always head on over to our 24/7 Artemis live stream, where you'll be able to see views of the 322-foot tall rocket with the Orion spacecraft at the top. Call to stations scheduled for tonight for the beginning of the all-important wet dress rehearsal. And as a reminder, we'll have dedicated coverage of that important tanking test that begins Saturday late morning. Currently, we're set to get that rolling at 11:35 a.m. Eastern. And we hope you're able to join us for a part or all of that live coverage. Just as one final caveat to that, though, at this point in time, NASA is not expected to be offering mission audio coming out of Firing Room 1 or technical commentator updates coming adjacent to the firing room. So information from the progress of the wet dress rehearsal will be fairly sparse and coming mostly in blog form. So just want to set up those expectations of what NASA is and is not offering that will help augment our coverage of the wet dress rehearsal. Again, we'll have that dedicated stream this Saturday. Want to thank our moderators who've been helpful with this stream today, to Mark Otto, Astro, Joe, and Jeff Hansen. Appreciate the three of you, and to one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, for answering folks' questions in the chat. Big thanks to our Spaceflight Now production extraordinaire, John Pisani, for running the technical operations of this broadcast, alongside our editor, Stephen Young. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you have been watching. We certainly appreciate your time and attention, and look forward to welcoming you back here when we have another launch to cover. As it stands, that's later on tonight. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks, and until then, bye-bye.